The air inside the Velka Star Casino was thick with tension. The vast gambling hall, a floating palace in the middle of deep space, was filled with creatures from every corner of the galaxy. From towering, scaled reptilians to slimy, tentacled beings, everyone had come for the same reason: to win big or lose everything. At a dimly lit table in the center of the room, Captain Elias Vance leaned back in his chair, his expression calm but sharp. He was the only human in this part of the casino, and he knew all eyes were on him. The game was Zalorith, a high-stakes card game played across the galaxy. It wasn't just about luck. It required strategy, reading opponents, and knowing when to take risks. His opponents were some of the wealthiest and most dangerous beings in the system. Among them sat Olvan, an old gray-skinned Carthan noble. His sharp horns curved backward, his golden robes now wrinkled and dull, a sign of a once powerful man who had fallen on hard times. Olvan's hands trembled as he looked at his cards. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He had already lost his ship, his family crest, and even his personal guards. And yet he wasn't stopping. I will raise," Olvan said, his voice cracking. Elias raised an eyebrow. The old alien had nothing left to bet. The other players at the table exchanged glances. "With what?" A large four-armed dealer growled, his voice echoing through the hall. Olvan took a deep breath and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small metal disc, pressing a button on its side. A hologram flickered to life, showing the image of a young Carthan woman with deep violet skin, sharp golden eyes, and regal features. Gasps spread across the table. Elias's hand tightened around his cards. "My daughter," Olvan said, his voice heavy with desperation. "Vera. She is of noble blood, highly educated, trained in politics and combat. A valuable prize." The room fell silent. Even in the lawless parts of space, betting a person was a rare and dangerous move. Elias felt a wave of disgust rise in his chest, but he didn't let it show on his face. The dealer hesitated, then turned to Elias. "You are the only player left in the game. Do you accept the bet?" Elias looked at his cards. His hand was strong. If he played correctly, he would win. But this was no ordinary gamble. Winning a ship or money was one thing. Winning a person was something else entirely. He glanced at Olvan, whose eyes were wild with fear. This wasn't just a game to him. It was survival. Elias sighed. He had two choices: walk away and leave Vera to whatever fate awaited her, or win and decide what to do later. Neither option sat well with him, but one was slightly better than the other. "I call," Elias said, placing his final chips on the table. The dealer nodded and flipped the cards. Elias had won. A heavy silence followed. Olvan slumped in his chair, his face hollow and broken. He had gambled everything away. The dealer turned to Elias. "The girl is now yours." Elias's jaw tightened. "I don't own people," he thought. But before he could say anything, a loud alarm rang through the casino. A deep voice boomed over the speakers. "Attention! Security breach detected. Unregistered weapons detected near the high-stakes tables." Elias instinctively reached for his sidearm, his instincts honed from years of surviving in dangerous places. The room erupted into chaos as heavily armed mercenaries stormed in, their weapons raised. At the front of the group stood a tall, armored alien with glowing red eyes, a bounty hunter. His voice was cold as he spoke. "Olvan, you have failed to pay your debts. The Zorith cartel has come to collect." The old alien paled. "No, please, just a little more time." The bounty hunter raised his weapon, aiming straight at Olvan. Without thinking, Elias flipped the table, using it as cover as he drew his pistol. Blaster fire erupted across the room. The casino was no longer a place of games. It had become a battlefield. Elias had just won Vera in a game of chance. Now he would have to fight to keep her alive. Blaster fire lit up the casino like a deadly fireworks display. Shouts and screams echoed as gamblers ran for cover, tipping over tables and knocking down holoscreens in their panic. Elias Vance ducked behind the overturned card table, his pistol hot in his hands. The bounty hunters had come for Olvan, but Elias knew that once they finished with the old alien, they wouldn't hesitate to go after anyone in their way, including him. Olvan cowered on the floor, hands over his head, mumbling in his alien tongue. The bounty hunter leading the charge, a towering armored figure with glowing red eyes, raised his blaster. You had your chance, Olvan. The Zorith cartel does not forgive. Elias acted fast. He fired 2 quick shots at the bounty hunter's hand, forcing him to drop his weapon. The alien roared in pain, and the moment of distraction was all Elias needed. He grabbed Olvan's arm and pulled him up. Move, Elias shouted. The old alien stumbled forward, but Elias barely got 2 steps before a new voice cut through the chaos. Enough. The voice was sharp, commanding. It belonged to Vera. Elias turned. Standing at the top of the casino stairs was the woman he had unknowingly won in a gamble. Vera Olvan, daughter of the fallen noble, stared down at the battlefield below with a gaze as sharp as a blade. She wore traditional Carthan warrior robes, deep blue with gold trim, and her golden eyes burned with fury. Her sharp violet features were regal, but her stance was strong. She did not look like a helpless prize to be won. The bounty hunters hesitated. Elias saw the flicker of uncertainty in their leader's stance. Vera was important, perhaps more than Elias had realized. "Leave my father alone," she said coldly. "You want a debt repaid. Then take me instead." Olvan gasped. "No. Vera, don't." Elias swore under his breath. Just what had he gotten himself into? The bounty hunter chuckled. "A noble sacrifice, little princess, but the cartel wants both of you." He raised his weapon again, this time aiming at her. Elias didn't give him the chance. He shot first. His blaster bolt struck the alien's shoulder, sending him crashing into a nearby pillar. Elias didn't waste time. He sprinted toward Vera, grabbing her wrist. "Come on, Your Highness. Time to run," he said. She tried to pull away. "I don't need your help." "Yeah." Elias fired another shot over his shoulder. "Tell that to the guys trying to kill you." She hesitated, then reluctantly followed. Together, they ran through the burning casino. Security alarms blared as guards tried, and failed, to contain the chaos. The bounty hunters were right behind them, shouting orders and firing wild shots. Elias knew they wouldn't make it to his ship unless they got creative. He scanned the casino floor and spotted a speeder parked near the exit, a sleek, single-pilot craft meant for VIP guests. "That'll do," he muttered. He grabbed Vera's hand again and made a run for it. As they reached the speeder, Elias shoved a panicked alien gambler out of the driver's seat. "Sorry, pal. I'm borrowing this." Before the alien could argue, Elias gunned the engine. The speeder roared to life, and they shot forward, bursting through the casino doors and into the neon-lit streets of Velka Station. Escaping Velka Station, the station's skylanes were packed with speeders, cargo haulers, and patrol ships. Elias weaved through traffic, pushing the stolen speeder to its limits. Vera, sitting behind him, gripped the seat tightly. "You're going to get us killed," she shouted. Elias grinned. "Not today." Behind them, bounty hunter ships gave chase, their blasters firing in rapid bursts. Vera twisted around and grabbed Elias's blaster from his belt. "Hey!" Before he could argue, she fired back, hitting one of the pursuing ships square in the engine. It exploded in a ball of fire. Elias blinked. "Remind me never to play against you in a shooting contest." She ignored him, focused on the next target. Velka Station's docking bay loomed ahead. The ironclad, Elias's old but reliable ship, sat waiting. Elias slammed the speeder into a hard turn, nearly flipping it. The vehicle skidded to a stop just outside the ship's loading ramp. "Move," Elias shouted. They leaped out just as another explosion rocked the station behind them. Elias hit the control panel, sealing the ship's entrance as more bounty hunters arrived. He sprinted to the cockpit, flipping switches as fast as his hands could move. The ship's engines roared. Hold on. With a final push of the throttle, the ironclad blasted away from the station, escaping into the void of space. For a few moments, there was only silence, just the soft hum of the ship's systems. Elias let out a breath. Well, that was fun. Vera, arms crossed, glared at him. You stole me, she said flatly. Elias groaned. Look, lady, I didn't want to win you, all right. Your father bet you like a game piece. Her golden eyes darkened. I know. She turned away, her shoulders tense. Elias watched her carefully. She was angry, but not at him. He sighed and leaned against the cockpit wall. Look, you're free to go. I don't keep passengers who don't want to be here. Vera slowly looked up at him. And where exactly am I supposed to go? The cartel is still after me. Elias smirked. Then I guess you're stuck with me. She narrowed her eyes. If you think I'm going to be your servant. Elias held up his hands. Whoa, let's get one thing straight. I don't do masters and servants. We're just two people trying to stay alive. Vera studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Fine. She held out her hand. We work together. Nothing more. Elias shook it. Deal. As the stars stretched out before them, neither of them knew what lay ahead. But one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. The ironclad sliced through the vast emptiness of space, its hull still glowing from the heated escape. Elias Vance leaned back in his pilot's chair, eyes fixed on the glowing blue planet ahead. Varkos 9. It was a dusty, forgotten world, a planet of ruined cities and lost knowledge. It wasn't exactly the kind of place Elias liked visiting, but right now it was the best lead they had. From the co-pilot's seat, Vera Olvan stared at the planet with narrowed eyes. This is where your historian friend lives, she asked. Elias smirked. Lives? More like hides. Professor Kellis is an expert in ancient civilizations, but he prefers to stay off the grid. No taxes, no law, no trouble. Vera crossed her arms. And you trust him? I trust that he values his own neck, Elias said. And if he knows anything about why the Zorith cartel wants you, he'll talk. Vera didn't look convinced, but she said nothing. Elias guided the ship through the atmosphere, breaking through thick, yellowish clouds. The planet's surface stretched below them. Dusty plains, scattered ruins, and a few abandoned outposts. Then, through the fog, the landing site appeared. A small research station sat at the edge of a crumbling city, its metal towers rusted and worn. Elias brought the ironclad down, kicking up a storm of dust as the ship's landing gear met solid ground. Elias turned to Vera. All right, princess. Time to meet a genius. She gave him a sharp look. Call me that again, and I'll throw you out of the airlock. Elias grinned. Noted. Meeting the historian. The station doors slid open with a rusty hiss, revealing a tall, thin man in a tattered brown coat. His gray hair was wild, and his cybernetic eye flickered with a green glow. Professor Kellis. Elias Vance, the old man muttered, rubbing his forehead. I thought I told you never to bring trouble to my doorstep. Elias chuckled. What can I say? Trouble follows me everywhere. Kellis's glowing eye scanned Vera. His expression turned serious. And who's this? He asked. Vera stepped forward, standing tall. Vera Olvan of the Carthan Empire. Kellis blinked. Then he laughed. Impossible, he said. Olvan's bloodline was wiped out during the last war. The Carthan Empire barely exists anymore. Vera's eyes flashed with anger. My father still lives. Kellis's laughter stopped. He looked between her and Elias, realization dawning on his face. Wait, This is about the cartel, isn't it? Elias nodded. They want her badly. We need to know why. The professor sighed, rubbing his temples. You two have no idea what you've stumbled into. Elias exchanged a glance with Vera. Enlighten us. A dangerous bloodline. Kellis led them into his research lab, where old books and digital archives were stacked in messy piles. He pulled up a holographic display, showing an ancient symbol, a golden crest shaped like a star. This, he said, is the symbol of the Carthan royal bloodline. He turned to Vera. Your family wasn't just a noble house, girl. It was a dynasty tied to something powerful. Vera frowned. Powerful how? Kellis zoomed in on the hologram, showing ancient scripts. Legend says that the first rulers of Cartha made a pact with something beyond this galaxy. A force, an entity. No one knows for sure, but they received something in return. Elias folded his arms. Let me guess, something valuable enough for the cartel to hunt her down. Kellis nodded. Yes, according to old records, the Carthan rulers were guardians of a lost artifact, one with the power to reshape reality itself. Vera stiffened. That's just a myth. Kellis gave her a knowing look. Maybe. But myths don't stop bounty hunters from killing people, do they? Silence filled the room. Elias sighed. So let me get this straight. The cartel thinks Vera has some kind of secret key to this ancient artifact. Kellis shrugged. Either she has it, or they think she knows where it is. Vera clenched her fists. I don't know anything about an artifact. Kellis's cybernetic eye flickered. Then why did your father gamble you away? Vera's breath caught. She had no answer. Elias cleared his throat. All right, let's assume the cartel believes she's important. What do we do next? Kellis tapped on the hologram, pulling up a star map. If you want real answers, you'll need to go here. He pointed to a distant planet. Exara Prime. Vera narrowed her eyes. What's there? Kellis exhaled. The ruins of the last Carthan stronghold. If there's anything left of your family's secret, you'll find it there. Elias scratched his chin. And what's the catch? Kellis smirked. The Zorath cartel isn't the only one looking for it. A new mission. Back on the ironclad, Elias set the new course. Vera sat across from him, deep in thought. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Elias studied her. You okay? She shook her head. I don't know. If this artifact is real, it means my father lied to me my whole life. Elias sighed. Yeah, well, parents aren't perfect. She looked at him. And what about you, Elias? Why are you helping me? Elias smirked. Because I like getting paid. And right now, you're the most valuable person in the galaxy. Vera gave him a tired smile. At least you're honest. The ship's engines flared as they jumped into hyperspace, heading toward answers, danger, and whatever lay waiting on Exora Prime. The ironclad soared through the vast darkness of space, its engines humming steadily. Inside the cockpit, Elias Vance leaned back in his pilot's chair, watching the star map flicker on the console. Their escape from Velka Station had been close. Too close, but for now, they were safe, or at least as safe as anyone could be when the Zorath cartel wanted them dead. In the co-pilot's seat, Vera Olvan sat with her arms crossed, staring out into space. The dim light from the dashboard cast a golden glow on her violet skin, but her expression was unreadable. Elias sighed. All right, princess, time to talk. Vera didn't even glance at him. About what? He gestured toward her. About why a bunch of bounty hunters just chased us through a casino and nearly blasted us to dust. She stayed silent for a moment, then said, they were after my father. Elias smirked. No kidding. But they didn't just want him. They wanted you. Why? Vera hesitated. Her sharp golden eyes flickered with something Elias couldn't quite place. Anger. Regret, maybe even sadness. My father wasn't always a desperate gambler, she said finally. Olvan was once a powerful noble of the Carthan Empire. He had wealth, influence, and a seat on the High Council. Elias nodded, listening. But the empire is not as strong as it used to be, Vera continued. Rival factions rose, trade collapsed, and corruption spread. My father lost everything trying to save what was left. The Zoreth cartel saw his weakness and offered him loans, large ones. Elias ran a hand through his hair. Let me guess, he couldn't pay them back. Vera nodded, not even close. He gambled, hoping to win enough to clear his debts, but it only made things worse. That's why he bet me. Elias frowned. So, you were his last hope. She looked at him sharply. I was his last mistake. Silence filled the cockpit. Elias didn't press further. He had met men like Olvan before, once powerful, now broken. But Vera, she wasn't broken. She was angry. And anger made people dangerous. A new threat. A warning beep echoed from the ship's controls. Elias sat up straight, checking the sensors. His stomach tightened. We've got company. Vera leaned forward. How many? Elias flicked a switch, bringing up the display. 3 red dots blinked on the screen, closing in fast. 3 Zoreth fighters, he said. Small, but fast. They must have tracked us from Velka Station, Vera muttered. Elias cracked his knuckles. All right, time to see how good my flying is. He grabbed the controls and yanked hard to the right. The ironclad rolled, diving sharply as laser fires. Vera's voice came through the comms. They're locking on. Elias gritted his teeth. He flipped a switch, releasing a cloud of countermeasures. The missile streaked toward them, but veered off at the last second, detonating harmlessly in the distance. Nice try, Elias muttered. Vera's next shot clipped another fighter, sending it spinning out of control. It collided with an asteroid, vanishing in a burst of flames. Only one enemy remained. Elias didn't wait. He pulled the ironclad into a sharp dive, forcing the last fighter to follow. Vera, he called. On my signal, fire straight ahead. She hesitated. But, trust me. As the enemy fighter chased them, Elias suddenly killed the engines, making the ironclad drop like a stone. The Zoreth pilot didn't react in time. Vera fired. The final fighter exploded in midair. Whoever built this didn't want anyone getting in, Elias muttered. Vera stepped forward, brushing dust off an inscription. It says, "Only blood may open the gate." Elias raised an eyebrow. That sounds dramatic. Vera took a deep breath, and before Elias could stop her, she pressed her palm against the stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the gate rumbled. A deep grinding noise echoed through the ruins as the massive door split apart, revealing a dark passageway leading underground. Elias blinked. Well, that's not creepy at all. Vera smirked. Afraid of the dark, Vance. Not the dark, Elias muttered. Just what's waiting in it. They stepped inside. The air was colder, damp with time, and the walls glowed faintly with golden lines. Ancient energy running through the structure. Then, a voice echoed through the chamber. You should not have come here. Elias spun, pistol raised. Vera tensed beside him. From the shadows, a figure emerged. It was tall, armored in golden plating, with glowing blue eyes. A Carthan guardian, left behind to protect whatever lay hidden in these ruins. The guardian's voice was deep mechanical. State your purpose. Vera stepped forward. I am Vera Olvan, daughter of the last noble house of Cartha. I seek the truth. The guardian studied her for a long moment. Then it spoke again. Then you seek the artifact. Elias exhaled. So, it's real. The guardian nodded. The heart of Cartha is not a myth. It is power beyond understanding, and it must never fall into the wrong hands. Vera's jaw tightened. The Zoreth cartel is coming for it. We need to find it first. The guardian hesitated. Then it turned and gestured for them to follow. "Then we must hurry," it said, "for you are already being hunted. A race against time." The underground chamber stretched deep into the ruins, glowing with strange energy. Vera's heart pounded. This was the legacy of her people, the secret hidden from her all her life. Elias, on the other hand, was more focused on their survival. "So, what exactly does this heart of Cartha do?" he asked. The guardian's blue eyes flickered. It was the gift of the ancients. It can reshape matter, bend reality, and, in the wrong hands, destroy entire civilizations. Elias swore under his breath. "Yeah, okay. Definitely don't want the cartel getting that." Before they could ask more, a distant explosion shook the ruins. Vera's eyes widened. "They're here." Elias grabbed his pistol. "Guess we don't have much time." The guardian led them deeper into the tunnels. "The artifact lies ahead, but only one of royal blood may claim it." Vera nodded. "Then let's finish this." As they ran deeper, the sounds of approaching ships and gunfire echoed through the ruins. The cartel had arrived, and the final battle was about to begin. The ground shook violently, dust and loose stones falling from the ancient ceiling. The Zorath cartel had arrived. Elias Vance grabbed Vera's arm and pulled her behind a stone pillar. "We need to move. Now." The golden armored guardian turned its glowing blue eyes toward the entrance. "They will not stop until they take the artifact. If they succeed, the galaxy will suffer." Vera clenched her fists. "Then we stop them." The guardian nodded and led them deeper into the underground chamber. The walls pulsed with golden light, ancient energy guiding their way. But behind them, the sound of boots and weapons charging grew louder. The cartel was closing in. The inner chamber. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, unlike anything Elias had ever seen. At the center stood a massive stone pedestal, and on it rested a floating crystal-like artifact, glowing with shifting golden patterns, the heart of Cartha. Vera's breath caught. "It's real." The guardian stepped forward. "Only one of royal blood may awaken its power." It turned to Vera. "You must take it." Elias frowned. "Hold on. What happens when she does?" The guardian's voice was grave. "The heart will test her. If she is worthy, she may wield it. If not, she will perish." Elias swore under his breath. "Oh, great. No pressure." Vera took a shaky breath and stepped toward the pedestal. The golden light of the artifact reflected in her eyes, almost like it recognized her. But before she could reach for it, boom! The entrance exploded in a fiery blast, sending rock and debris flying. Elias shielded Vera, barely avoiding the impact. When the dust cleared, armed cartel soldiers poured in, weapons raised. At the center of the group stood a tall, scared alien with piercing red eyes. Vorak, the cartel enforcer. He grinned. Well, looks like we found our prize." Elias drew his pulse pistol, aiming at the approaching soldiers. "You're a little late to the party." Vorak chuckled. "Oh, I think we're right on time." He raised a hand, and his men opened fire. The fight begins. Blaster shots filled the chamber, blue and red streaks of energy lighting up the ancient walls. Elias dove behind a stone barrier, firing back with sharp, precise shots. His gun took down 2 soldiers, but more kept coming. The guardian charged forward, its golden armor deflecting enemy fire as it swung its massive blade, cutting through the attackers like a storm. Vera ducked behind cover, grabbing a fallen enemy's weapon. She had no choice but to fight. She popped up, aimed, and fired. A cartel soldier fell. Her hands shook, but she kept going. Vorak watched, amused. "Brave little princess, but this doesn't belong to you." He drew a massive plasma blade and lunged toward the pedestal. Vera's heart pounded. He was going for the artifact. "No," she shouted, breaking cover and sprinting toward the heart. Vorak swung his blade at her. "T'ush." The Guardian blocked the strike, locking blades with the Enforcer. Their weapons crackled as energy clashed against energy. Vorak snarled, "You can't stop me, machine." The Guardian pushed back. "I will protect the heart until my last breath." Elias fired at Vorak, but the Enforcer dodged and kicked Elias hard in the chest, sending him crashing into a wall. Pain exploded in Elias's ribs, but he forced himself up. Okay, that hurt. Meanwhile, Vera reached the pedestal. The artifact pulsed in her presence, glowing brighter. She hesitated for just a moment. Then she grabbed the heart of Kartha. The awakening. A wave of golden energy blasted through the room, knocking everyone off their feet. The blaster fire stopped. The soldiers, Elias, Vorak, all frozen, staring in shock. The heart of Kartha rose into the air, its glow spreading through Vera's body. She felt power flood her veins. Visions of the past and future flashed through her mind. Her ancestors, the fall of the Empire, and the artifact's true purpose. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a force of creation and destruction, a power that could restore or erase. Vera gasped, struggling to contain it. Vorak, recovering first, lunged at her with his blade. But Vera raised a hand. A shockwave of golden light erupted from her palm, sending Vorak flying across the chamber, crashing into a pillar. He slumped, unconscious. Elias whistled. Well, that's new. The cartel soldiers, seeing their leader fall, panicked and retreated. The battle was over. But something had changed. Vera stood at the center of the chamber, glowing with energy, her eyes no longer just golden, but burning with light. Elias stepped forward, cautious. Vera. She turned to him, her voice echoing with power. I know why they wanted the heart. Elias frowned. Why? Her expression darkened. Because it can rewrite fate. The chamber hummed with energy. Vera stood in the center, the heart of Kartha glowing in her hands. The golden light spread through her body, making her eyes burn like twin stars. Elias Vance pushed himself up, still feeling the ache from Vorak's earlier attack. He could barely recognize Vera now. The soft-spoken noblewoman he had met was gone. In her place stood something powerful, ancient, and terrifying. Vera, he said carefully, are you okay? She turned to him, but there was something distant in her gaze, like she was seeing 1,000 possibilities at once. I see everything, she whispered. The past, the future, the endless paths of fate. Elias exchanged a glance with the golden-armored guardian, who remained kneeling before Vera, reverence in its glowing blue eyes. The heart has accepted you, the guardian said. You now hold the power of Kartha itself. Elias exhaled sharply. Power. That was always the problem, wasn't it? Behind them, Vorak groaned, pushing rubble off himself. He was still alive, but barely. The cartel's remaining forces had already fled, leaving him behind. He looked up at Vera, his expression filled with hatred. You don't understand what you're holding. Vera floated slightly above the ground, her body still glowing. I understand more than you ever could. Vorak coughed, smirking despite his pain. Then tell me, princess, what will you do with it? Elias stepped forward, heart pounding. That was the question, wasn't it? A choice of destiny. The heart of Kartha wasn't just a weapon. It wasn't just an artifact of an old empire. It could rewrite reality. With a single thought, Vera could restore her people, bring back the lost Karthan empire, undo centuries of suffering. But at what cost? Elias had seen this before. Too much power. It always led to destruction. He took a slow step closer to her. Vera, you don't have to do this. She turned to him, golden light swirling around her. I can fix everything, Elias. I can bring my people back. I can erase the mistakes of history. Elias swallowed hard. Maybe. But what happens to the people who live now? The galaxy has moved on. If you rewrite the past, what happens to the present? Vera hesitated. For the first time, doubt flickered in her burning eyes. The guardian spoke, its voice steady. The heart grants the wielder ultimate power, but power is a burden, not a gift. Vera clutched the artifact tighter. The golden energy crackled around her like a storm. She looked at Elias. I don't know what to do. Elias sighed, stepping right in front of her. Then listen to your heart, not the heart of Cartha. The final decision. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, the golden energy began to fade. Vera lowered herself back to the ground. The glow in her eyes dimmed. The artifact stopped pulsing. She exhaled shakily. I won't change the past. Elias smiled with relief. Good choice. The guardian nodded in approval. You have proven yourself worthy, Vera Olvan. She glanced at the artifact. What do I do with it? The guardian stepped forward. The heart cannot remain here. It will always attract those who seek its power. It must be hidden, beyond the reach of time itself. Elias scratched his head. Sounds complicated. Got a plan for that. The guardian reached out, placing its massive hand over the artifact. A soft hum filled the air. The golden energy wrapped around the heart, forming a protective shell of pure stasis. It will be taken to the depths of the void, locked away forever. Vera hesitated. And you? The guardian gave a slow bow. My purpose is complete. My time ends here. With those final words, its glowing blue eyes dimmed, and its massive form crumbled into dust, leaving behind only the echo of its presence. Vera and Elias stood in silence, watching as the heart of Cartha slowly vanished, sealed away from the galaxy. The burden was lifted, but the weight of the experience remained. A new beginning. Outside, the sky was turning a soft shade of crimson. The battle was over, and Exera Prime was quiet once more. Vera and Elias walked back toward the ironclad, their boots crunching against the ancient stone. So, Elias said, glancing at her, what now? Vera took a deep breath. I don't know. She looked up at the sky. For the first time in my life, I don't have a path set for me. Elias smirked. Then maybe it's time to make your own. She looked at him, a small smile forming. Maybe. They reached the ship. Elias opened the ramp and gestured toward the cockpit. Where to, princess? Vera rolled her eyes. Anywhere but here. Elias chuckled. That I can do. As the ironclad lifted off, leaving the ruins behind, Vera took one last look at Exora Prime. The past was behind her. Now, it was time to write her own future.